If you learned object-oriented programming in school, you probably had an assignment that was along the lines of making a student class that has some attributes, getters, setters, and whatever else. And you probably threw some inheritance in there as well. So, you walked away passing this class and start a personal project outside of school, but when you get a few hundred lines of code in, you realize this is not good code. What happened? You just learned all of this stuff. So why do you still suck? It might be because when you learn object-oriented programming in school, the instructor typically gives you the class structure of the program from the beginning. However, I find that new programmers don't have the foresight to plan a software architecture like this. But that's okay. You don't need to get the structure of your program right from the beginning. So I'm going to go over some signals that it's time to refactor by using classes in your code. Let's take a look at this code for a snake game. Don't think too hard about what the code is doing, but look at the variable names as well as the function definition. This is our first signal, repetition in function and variable names. Do you see how many times the word snake is written in these declarations? This is an indication that you should move this code into a snake class. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this is better. For one, we've eliminated the global variables. And now, this code is also more scalable. For example, what if one day you decide you want to make a multiplayer snake game? This is what the multiplayer code would look like without classes. We have a lot of code repetition, and both of these movement functions are almost doing the same thing. But when we use the snake class that we made before, we don't need to write nearly as many lines of code. Now let's move on to another example. In this code, from reading the docstring, we know that we're dealing with database operations. This is our second signal, similar or related functions. All of these functions are working with the database, so it makes sense to put it into a database class. And let's not stop there, because honestly, this code doesn't provide that many benefits from the previous. Notice that all of these functions use connection and cursor. Let's make these global variables into instance variables of the database class, making it so we only need to pass in the path to the database into the constructor. Now the value of using classes in this situation really shines through, because I don't want to see this ever again. And now I don't have to, because I can put this code in another file and import the class when I want. You might be wondering though, how come I didn't opt to put these functions into a song class? I mean, I did just say in the last example that repetition in function names means you might want to put these into a class. And fetch all songs, insert song, and delete song clearly all have the word song in their names. The most intuitive reason I could give you guys as to why you don't put these functions into a song class is that there is nothing intrinsic about a song that lets it get fetched from, inserted into, or deleted from a database. You know, that's just not what songs do. But fetching, inserting, and deleting, those are all actions that are inherently associated with databases. A database would be useless if you don't do those things. Anyway, my point is, if you put your code in the appropriate class, it's going to be easier to understand and maintain. Now on to our last example, which was actually inspired by some code I was writing for the animations of this video. In this code, we're creating code objects frequently. I want you to notice how often I'm using the same arguments in these constructors. This is our final signal. So instead of writing the same arguments every time I make a code object, let's make a class that inherits the code class. I'm going to call my version styled code. In styled code, I can make some arguments default to the constructor or hard-coded. Now, I don't need to enter as many arguments every time I instantiate a code object. So those are the red flags that I think new programmers should look out for. Let me know if you have any other examples in the comments.